Hello, Carissa here, and I'm going to talk to you about how to choose the right camera for your needs. And here's a spoiler alert. I think for most of you, you're going to find that the recommendation is going to be a mirrorless camera. So many people, for their first serious camera, so to speak, their first non-point and shoot, they go with the DSLR. DSLRs do amazing things. They're great cameras. They have amazing capabilities. As a new photographer, you're not going to need to use a ton of the features that are on there. I've been photographing relatively seriously for 6 or 7 years, and there are only a handful of differences between the two. So especially for just starting out, it's really nice to have the ease of use and kind of the features that I enjoy about my mirrorless. I really would recommend it for a first timer who's just upgrading. So as you can see, one of the big differences is size. Another big difference is weight. This one is well over 5 pounds. This one's under 1. As I travel, I never take my DSLR with me, ever. It's bulky, it's heavy. My neck hurts at the end of the day. And this one, I just end up not taking photos. I end up not taking it. It's just such a pain in the butt. I just don't take it with me. This one is fantastic. It fits. I usually don't actually even bring I'm currently not using a camera case. I don't know why, but I just even use this little case, little zipper. I put it in there. I put it in my purse so that the back touchscreen doesn't scratch up. There are even some features. I mentioned about ease of use, and there are some features I like better about my mirrorless. And don't let it fool you. Don't let the simplicity of it fool you. It's not like a beginner camera. It's not really a professional camera. I had read an article, and some National Geographic photographers, for the same reason, when they're out and about, they love the weight of this, and they have been so impressed with the quality. And so they have switched to, at least part-time, using a mirrorless camera. And there are, just like DSLRs, there's a range, and there's an entry level, mid-level, and then high-end level. So it does some really incredible, amazing things. So one of the easy features that I love is the selective focus. So if you don't know what that means, it means when you are maybe focusing on something close up, or it could be far away, and then the rest is going to be blurred. So you're telling the camera what you want to be in focus, and then it will do its thing with the rest of it. And this camera is fantastic for that, because with my DSLR, I have to use a special toggle button, and then to pull up my focus points, and then I have to go between them and maybe look in the viewfinder, make sure it's right, and it can take a bit to set up, which is a pain when you're photographing people because they get impatient. With this guy, all I have to do is I have to say I want to take a picture of that, I touch the point that I want it to focus on, and then I snap the shutter, and that's it. It's also really helpful when you might have different lighting situations in your foreground and background, or different lighting anywhere. Maybe there's a really bright light next to the person's head and you want it to light for their face, or you want it to light for that bright light. Maybe you want to try both ways. It's easy to experiment. All you have to do is when you touch the point, it'll light the photo for that point. So I love that feature about it. It's probably my favorite thing about this camera. I really love it. The other thing that it does better, and this might be model specific for me because I'll talk about buying older models of cameras a bit later, but my DSLR does not autofocus when it's on movie mode, which is a problem because when you're on movie mode, your subjects are moving and you have to manually focus it, and you're trying to do it on a pretty tiny screen. So, they have workarounds. It's still a good video camera. I can zoom in and then I can focus it, but it's just an obstacle to consider. And this guy autofocuses, so that's very helpful. The only con, and it's only kind of a con, and again, might be model specific because at this point my camera is probably 6 years old. The recovery time after you take a photo, especially if you have it on continuous shoot, which means where you put it on a setting, maybe you have a subject moving quickly and you want it to take photos in rapid succession, the recovery time is a little bit longer than my DSLR. I've rarely found it to be a problem. The only time it's a bit annoying is if I'm in a photo session doing a portrait where children are involved and I have a limited amount of time and I really want to take it. And when I say a little bit longer, like if I'm taking one photo and then it registers it to the SD card, it maybe takes a second. And this one is like a really small fraction of a second. So relatively, it's not that big of a deal. the more photos you take, the more seconds it might take to store it to the memory card. But that's also something you should be able to get a feel for if you go into a store and just kind of test it out and see if it bugs you. And like I said, it might not even be an issue on newer options. The other thing I really want to talk to you about is to never, ever, 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 ever buy your cameras or lenses new on Amazon, or always buy them used, because you can take advantage of the fact that people want to upgrade and you can save hundreds of dollars. It can be half the price sometimes to buy something that's 2 or 3 years old. And that might seem old. That might seem like you're getting a really old model. But like I said, this one's 6 years old and it takes beautiful photos. And the only feature that I would really love to have on a newer one is to have it be Wi-Fi capable. Because when you're traveling, you don't want to bring your computer with you sometimes, and you want to just upload photos to your phone but take them with a nice camera. And there's a quick workaround. It's called a Wi-Fi capable, there's several brands, I use iFi, a Wi-Fi capable SD card. And so simple workaround, you download an app on your phone and you can just upload them. And if memory space is a concern of yours, that's not even a problem, because it stores them in the cloud and then you download them, the ones you want to edit that are good, to your phone. So those are the reasons why I love my mirrorless camera, why I think it is a really good entry option for a new photographer, and why I would definitely consider it. I don't think I've talked about manufacturers just yet, but I believe from the research I did before, the top manufacturer is usually universally agreed upon that it's Sony. If you think you're going to love your mirrorless camera, if you probably aren't going to upgrade to a Canon, then for sure go with Sony. And even if you are going to upgrade to a Canon, you might want to go with Sony. I decided to go with Canon because I bought a DSLR camera and then wanted something more portable, a bit smaller, and I was already familiar with the Canon menus and interfaces. So if you're coming from that situation like me, you might want to consider it. Or if you're coming from a Nikon DSLR, you might want to consider a Nikon mirrorless. They're still great cameras. You know, when people are talking about the differences, like, they're all really fantastic, and you're probably not going to notice a huge difference. It's about identifying the features that matter the most to you, and buying it based on that. So it's so easy to get wrapped up in the negative, like, well, this camera doesn't do this. And lots of times you have it for, years and you're like, I've never used that feature. I bought the camera for this feature and I've never used it. So each time I tell myself I'm going to look at it through that lens, so to speak, when I'm buying a new camera, and I always forget and got caught up in the bells and whistles of that some have. But so that's my spiel. That's my sales pitch. I will do an ode to my DSLR a bit later because I do love it. It's a wonderful camera. It takes absolutely gorgeous photos, and it's just used for different things. Really not. No, they can be used pretty interchangeably. I just tell myself that. There's no reason I need 2 cameras, but I have them. So that's just something that you tell yourself to make yourself feel better about it. I think I have rambled on for long enough. So if you ever have any questions, I'm always really happy to talk to you about what your particular needs are with the camera and help you choose the right one, right price point, etc. Whoa, I know. I didn't really quite go through used on Amazon. If you haven't told, this is maybe my 7th or 8th take on this guy. So I forget what I've covered and haven't, but when you're buying used on Amazon, in the description it'll say something like old model. And in the options to buy, you'll have an option to click on new and used, and then you'll have sellers that are not Amazon that you're purchasing from. Don't let that make you nervous. You're still using Amazon for the payment portal, so you're not having a security risk for your credit card information at all. And you can see right before you choose what seller you want to buy from or what camera, you can see maybe they have, hundreds or thousands of ratings, and you always want to make sure they have an approval rating that is, usually I go for 99%, like at the lowest 98. So that's pretty reliable. Like, you probably don't have to worry terribly about this not being what you're being promised with it being used. And you can also pick the condition. So it can be just like new or almost like new. I can't remember the exact terminology, but they have tiers that you can choose from, and the price goes up, up or down accordingly. And then with my Canon in particular, this is a Canon EOS M. Like I said, it's 5 or 6 years old, and it comes with just 2 lens choices that are EOS M modeled. And that's another reason why I think Sony has more lens choices. I honestly use my 22 millimeter. It's a 2 aperture. I use it all the time. And I have another one, which this one's prime, which means it doesn't zoom in and out. I have another one that I think is like a 35 to something millimeter. You can have the zoom in and zoom out, but it's a little longer, and I just don't use it. This one does so many different things. It's a great all-purpose lens. But that's something to think about as you're looking for a camera, is especially with these used options, sometimes they come with both lenses. Sometimes it might just be one or the other. You can buy the lenses just separately too, because as you can see, it is a detachable lens. The other cool thing, and why I said if you ever want to upgrade to a DSLR, you might want to think about getting that manufacturer's mirrorless, is my detachable lens. I don't have the attachment because, like I said, I actually bought it and I never used it, so I returned it. This lens will work on this camera. My DSLR lenses will. You just have to buy like a special attachment thing. It's kind of a converter. And so yeah, that's helpful for versatility too. You're not going to invest all this money in something that you can't use often. One more insider tip in general when you're buying a camera, and then I'll wrap this up. I learned this the super hard way. On a DSLR, really like my $800 lens. It isn't even that expensive in lens terms. Lenses are crazy expensive. That's why you buy it used. Buy a UV filter for your camera. And all that means is it is this little clear screw-off thing. Perfectly clear. This is what a filter is. There are threads on the inside of this lens, and you just screw that on. And what I did is I was photographing in Utah in the mountains, all taken aback by the beauty, just in a gorgeous spot, and I didn't have the neck strap on, and I dropped it, or maybe I did and I dropped it, and it took a chip out of the front of my lens. And I was telling my photography friends about it, and they're like, well, didn't you have your UV filter on? And that's what it'll do. If you drop your camera and something's going to hit the lens or chip it or scratch it or anything like that, it's a UV filter. So you're not, these cost $10, $20 at the most versus, my $800 lens to replace, or it was, I think $250 to repair it. So it's absolutely worth the investment. And I always recommend it to everybody, is get a UV filter. And then that will wrap the tutorial. So if you ever have any questions, always feel free to reach out to me. I'd love to see your comments below with if you've tried a mirrorless camera, or if you do decide to buy one, and kind of share your experience. And if you have any questions about choosing your camera, what features should be important to you, I'm always happy to talk through it with people and understand kind of what your needs will be and recommend the right one for you, or help you out with the research, because it can be really intimidating when there are a million features that they're talking about and you don't really know what any of them mean, or what a lot of them mean. So with that, happy shooting, and hopefully you're having some lovely travels that you're documenting too, or some lovely family times. And over and out, I guess. I will talk to you next time.